Is this the ultimate vlogging setup? Today I'm gonna give you a full breakdown over my Fujifilm X-T4 vlog setup, and we're going into detail. We'll break it down into every single part I use, why I use it, what are the benefits of using it, and also I'm gonna dive with you into my vlogging settings, gonna give you a breakdown as well, and a few tips and tricks how you can customizable your camera to have easier access to certain settings to speed up your workflow. Fujifilm X-T4 as my camera of choice. Fantastic camera, got IBIS up to 6.5 stops with certain lenses, got 4K up to 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second in full HD, and also 240 frames per second in full HD. Got a decent battery life and does pretty much everything I need to do it. Also, to mention, not to forget about it, the flippy screen, very important when you want to vlog. So my camera of choice, a Fujifilm X-T4, so far very happy with it, easy to use and delivers outstanding, very good quality or image quality, either in picture format and also video wise, and it's a very good hybrid camera. Next item on a list is a small rig camera cage, and there are basically three reasons for it. First reason would be it adds a bit of weight towards your camera, which is nice, and personally speaking I do like a bit of weight, and I got the feeling that I can have a more steady footage when filming. Second reason is it adds a bit of protection to it, or also you could say your first reason is a protection. If the camera would fall, it's more likely to hit the cage and not the body itself. And third reason is you got plenty of mounting points, so you could add additional lights, friction arms, or whatever else you wanted to add to the cage. You could mount it. Also, you could rig it out to a camera or a cinema camera type of rig if you wanted to. But my main three reasons for the rig is protection, weight, and the mounting points. You never know when you need the additional light when you're out and about vlogging. And then, of course, not to mention, you need a lens. I personally go with the 18-55, what Fujifilm classes as their kit lens. However, I found this lens outstanding in image quality, and also the stabilization is good. It's a 2.8 aperture at the widest at 18mm, and it's a f4 at 55mm. You still get very decent blurred background at 55mm at f4 if you want to, and you go nice and close with it, or you got a nice wide aperture of f2.8. So I think this lens is definitely a very good all-rounder lens, a very good starting point for everyone who wants to get a Fujifilm lens, or even if you buy it in a kit. I think this lens is almost unbeatable, and I still use it. Sometimes I think I would like to have a 16-55 for the constant aperture of f2.8, but then on the other hand side, I'm very happy with the 18-55 kit lens from Fujifilm. Next up would be definitely you need a variable ND filter, and I'm using a budget friendly ND filter from Gope, a variable ND filter. I think they have changed their name to Earth or something like that, but those filters, I think they start around £35 onwards, and they are decently priced, and they still provide you with a good result. You barely got any purple fringing. Sometimes you get this X when you turn a filter too far, but this is with most of the variable ND filters, and if you know this and you're aware of it, there's no problem to work around this. So yeah, very decent budget friendly filter, and it does the job for my needs. Next up would be then my Deity D3 mic, little shotgun mic. I started off with a Boya little shotgun mic for £25, and the difference between a little shotgun mic and actually the Deity D3 is quite huge in sound, and sometimes I think even this one is too good, and it picks up a lot of noise on my breathing, and you need to be careful with that, but if you know this, you're gonna walk around this. So definitely recommended the Deity D3. A little quick release plate. And also I got the shoulder strap quick release plate from Peak Design, so I can hang my camera on a camera belt if needed or if wanted. Very quick, easy access. If you need your hands, you can hook your camera in. And if you want to use your camera, you just hook it out and you're ready to go. Definitely recommended. Peak Design's little camera carrier clip. And then also I'm using on top of it the additional quick release plate. I think 20 pounds of Amazon, just to have easy access to the camera. I can mount it off, I can mount it on, very quickly access to it, because with the Gorilla tripod you just get this clip mount if you use the 1 kilogram version, and you don't need to fuss about that. You need to mount this clip all the time at the bottom of your camera. So you use a quick release plate, gives you a bit of quicker access to your camera if you want to use the camera without the Gorilla Pod or with your Gorilla Pod. But here's a little thing, I do use 2 different tripods when vlogging. A little Manfrotto tripod, just because of the size and weight, and it just extends the arm long enough to have yourself in frame. And I found you can hold this one a bit more steady than a Gorilla Pod sometimes. But also a Gorilla Pod, as some of you might know, guys, I do have a bit of a hate-love relationship with this thing, but it's definitely handy because you can literally mount it wherever you want it. You can put it down wherever you want it. So, and then last but not least is literally my SD cards. Let's see if I can focus this. Here we go. From SanDisk Extreme Pro, the 170 megabytes SDXC V30 Mark I version, which lets me record up to 200 megabytes within a camera, and for my personal needs that's absolutely enough. I don't need necessarily the 400 megabytes per second. I can cope with the 200 megabytes and still get enough detail and information in my files. So yeah guys, that's basically my setup, what I use. And the biggest downside for my personal reason, or for my personal, out of my personal experiences, is probably mostly the Gorilla tripod. But as we said already, a lot of people got a hate-love relationship with this thing. On the one hand side it's very handy, on the other hand side it's a bit annoying. But so far this setup does the job for me. I got everything I need. I got 4K up to 60 frames per second with slightly crop. I got 120 frames per second in full HD, which looking fantastic out of the X-T4. You could go up to 240 frames per second if you wanted to, but I found the 240 frames per second a bit mushy, so I stick to 120 frames per second if I need a higher frame rate. On average you shoot 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second anyway for talking headshots, and when you need 60 frames per second you would have 60 frames per second in 4K as well. So yeah guys, everything I need in a little package. The weight is alright, the size is okay, and now I would say enough gear talking. Let's dive into my menu settings, and I'm gonna show you what settings I use, how I set up the settings, and also a few tricks and tips how you can customizable your camera to get easier access to certain settings. So let's talk about settings. So the benefit of a Fujifilm system is that you got your ISO and shutter speed basically on top of it. So you don't need to dive into menus to change something. Very handy to have, that you just need to turn a button and you change your ISO. What I did as an example, because you don't always need face detection or eye detection, I customizable or basically use this button here on top for my face and eye detection. Because if I vlog, I want to use my face detection, but if I film some B-roll or just some environmental shots, I switch my face detection off, that this autofocus system doesn't always hunt for a face. So very handy and very easy to have with one button. Your face detection is on, your face detection is off, and you're good to go. So let's dive quickly into the Q menu. I changed my Q menu as well to make it easier when I'm out and about. I just need to hit the Q menu button and got full access more or less to all of my settings. So basically I got my video format in my Q setting as well. In this case we're shooting 4K 16:9 most of the time. If you do, of course, full high-speed recording or your 120 frames per second, this will change to full HD. Then I got a small button for my Kelvin. Here's the thing that you can always change it, or you could use presets as well. And with one simple twist on the dial, you change your Kelvin settings. Underneath, of course, if we chosen Kelvin settings, you can adjust your Kelvins as well. As example, here in the studio, I shoot 5600 Kelvin because my main light source is set to 5600 Kelvin. So it's gonna match my lighting situation. But if you're out and about and you film, you can use certain presets, sunny, cloudy day, etc. So that's up to you guys what you need to choose when you shoot. Next to it, basically my frame rate, what sort of frame rate I want to film in. In this case, at present, it's set to 24 frames per second, but you could choose 23.98, 59, 94, etc. So very simple and easy to change when you're out and about. Let's say you film in 24 frames per second, you do like a headshot talking scenario, and then you say, okay, I want to change to 60 frames per second. You just come over, go to 60 frames per second, hit the shutter button, and you're good to go, and you can film in 60 frames per second. Just make sure you need to adjust your shutter speed to 120 frames per second. Elsewise your frame rate won't match your shutter speed. So let's turn this back to 24 frames per second. Then on the left hand side I do got my face detection and eye detection here set as well, which I can choose if I want to use a face detection or eye detection. Of course that depends on the subject again, how you shoot, what you want to shoot, but it's easy access to enter your face detection if you wanted to change it from face to eye. And then when you go back to your custom button, it will say face or eye auto, and you can change it in your settings as well, or in your Q button menu as well. Then next to it, we can choose our megabytes we want to record. In this case, as we said already, my SD card can record up to 200 megabytes per second, which is definitely enough for my personal needs. So 400 megabytes, yeah, sometimes I think I should record 400 megabytes, but then your file size will be larger as well. And you need to keep this in mind. It's all about, nowadays, plenty of storage. Just bought some new hard drives as well to got enough storage. And then next to it we're gonna have our full HD high-speed recording, simple quick access where you can choose what sort of frame rate, 2 times 60 frames to reach 120 frames per second. On average, because I film in 24 frames per second, we choose 5 times 24 frames per second to reach our 120 frames per second. And then next to it also I can adjust my audio towards my mic if I need to turn down the decibels or keep the decibels up. Underneath I got my screen brightness from my LCD. On average it's set somewhere around 0 to +3, depends on how bright the environment is. I barely set it lower than 0 just to have a nice clean view on my screen. And if we're turning quickly the high speed sync off, then we're having also an IBIS button here as well, where we can say if our IBIS is on or off, depends on what sort of lens we might want to use. Also keep in mind, if you use a lens with OIS built in, if you switch a lens OIS off, it still overrides the in-body IBIS. So I hope Fujifilm will address this at some point with the software updates, that we can switch the IBIS in a lens or in a body individually off. And then basically I got a button where I can say I can choose between IBIS, OIS and digital IBIS as well. Keeping in mind guys that the digital IBIS will add additional crop towards your framing again. So, and with that said, that's pretty much how I did set up my Q menu. Very simple, easy. All important settings are there, that I can reach them, that I can change them on a fly, and I barely need to dig into the menu. However, we're gonna jump quickly into the menu now as well, and going quickly through our menu settings. So on average movie mode, we're shooting 16:9, 24 frames per second at 200 megabytes. I'm happy with 200 megabytes. I think it's a sweet spot between 100 and 400. And then basically our file format is HEC, or basically 420 10-bit internally, to get the best possible quality and the biggest file size as well, to get the most details, the most dynamic range, and basically the biggest file size possible to get the most out of the camera. Then our movie compression is long GOP, and then full high speed recording I enter via Q button. And on average I shoot f-log, but you can decide if you want to shoot the Eterna profile or if you want to shoot any other sort of color profile within a Fujifilm system. However, I like to shoot f-log to get the most dynamic range as well. But keep in mind again guys, if you shoot f-log, your base ISO starts at 640. And then basically coming through Zebra settings, I did switch on as well. I got some set to the right, so they're coming in from a right instead of a left, but that's personal preference. My Zebra settings are set to 95%. And yeah guys, that's pretty much how I did set up the Fujifilm X-T4 settings wise. And I think the most important aspect of this is the Q menu. The Q menu allows you to access your settings easy, quick. You can change them. You don't need to dig through pages of settings. Within the settings, you go through the Q menu, you hit the button, you change them, you press your shutter speed or your shutter button, and you're back to your main page and your display, and you're ready to shoot. So guys, I hope those inside settings been helpful. Very simple, very straightforward, but effective. Think about the Q menu button or Q menu itself. It's handy to have, and I think it's a very big advantage to have because it's very simple and easy to use. And if you would like to know how to set the Q menu up, let me know in the comments and we're gonna do another video about it. But for today, that's pretty much what I use on vlogging setup and settings. And if it was helpful to you, hit the thumbs up button, like, comment and subscribe, and I'm gonna see you, my friend, very soon in another video. Cheers guys.